on? Here we go. And one day, and I would play records of this woman. We had two, Judy Garland, Greatest Hits, and Miss Showbiz. I had never met her. I didn't know who she was, but I liked putting the records on the record player. So one day I'm in my room reading or doing something, and Dot comes in with this woman behind her, and this woman was she looked okay. She looked like she was a neighbor coming to visit. And Doc said, "This is the lady that's on your records." And I looked at her with her hair in just regular clothes, nothing fancy. And here was this album cover with this immaculate makeup and this coiffed look and the jewelry. And I took one look at her and I looked at the album cover and I said, "Nope." "Nope, that's not her." And she cackled. I mean, that's the best. She started to laugh. They both were laughing. And I'm sitting there thinking, what's wrong with these people? So that's how I met Judy.
How many here grew up waiting for The Wizard of Oz to come on television every year as it's like a special event? Not everybody, okay, a few people. Right. Well,
CBS.
Yeah, CBS, right.
TCM.
TCM much later. But when it was on network television, we all waited every year to watch The Wizard of Oz come on television, but like a holiday. So that was my introduction. And it was like, The Wizard of Oz is one of the best made scripts, one of the best made movies, because my criteria for a movie is a character or a storyline catches you within like the first couple minutes. You have empathy or sympathy for the character. And the moment she comes on screen, for me at least, I fell in love with her. So that was my introduction to her, was on those annual telecasts on television. And I'll tell you more about everything that happened after that when I have my next question.
Well, mine of course is the same as all of us. I was a fan, first. But my introduction to Judy Garland was actually a little bit more different. In that I am like a self-proclaimed, I think, a World War II historian, and my father studied it as well too. So my first Judy movie was actually Judgment in Nuremberg. And I remember watching it, and I said to my mom, "God, this woman's a really good actress." And I found out later, oh, she can sing too. So I can pull out before Wizard of Oz, believe it or not. And I was born in '74, so Judy passed away in '69. And so I was talking to see that movie coincidentally first. But many years later, of course, I knew all her body of work, and I got to, I had a book that came out, and Lorna, Judy's daughter, actually got a hold of my book, and I talked about her mother in that book. And Lorna reached out to me directly to honor her mother with a perfume. So that's how I actually got connected to the family. And when I met Joey and Liza and Lorna, and then Vanessa a little bit later on, the very first thing I said was to the state manager that said I would love to do this to honor her, and I'm a massive fan, but I have to do it with her family since they're all alive and well, and want to do this. I want to make sure if I'm going to do anything for a legend like Judy Garland, that everything has to be 1,000% correct to her. What she liked, what she didn't like, what she wore, what she didn't wear, down to the food that she liked, her personality. And I knew, like all of us, as a fan, but not being able to get the very, very intricate stories and behind the scenes, which Lorna and Liza were very, very much sharing with me. And then Joey came to my lab a couple months later, and he told me about his connection with his mother too. So I really got to unpack what I believe that she would have wanted, and did all three of her children and her granddaughter signed off on the fragrance. I feel like I did a good job on it.
While we're waiting, I want to say just one thing. People have asked me, who do you think is the greatest actress? Greatest performer. And I love Vivian Lee. I've always loved Vivian Lee. I love Vivian Lee. I'm Bergman. No. There's another category of someone that is totally unique because they did all three. Judy could act, she could dance, she could be funny, she could do comedy, and she was the only one I could think of. Angela Lansbury came close, but she didn't quite have the voice. And then they said, who is the greatest actor? Anthony Hopkins said Mickey Rooney. I thought he'd say Laurence Olivier. But I see why he said Mickey, because Mickey could sing and dance and act. And it's unique. I was trying to think of somebody else, and there wasn't anybody else. It was only Judy and Mickey. And it was in that totally unique category. And they were the greatest. And there'll never be anybody like them again. You could be a wonderful actress, a great singer, a great dancer, but not all three. So I just wanted to get that across. And I think one of the greatest performances ever, and I'm bypassing Wizard of Oz, moving St. Louis, and that is A Star is Born.
Woo!
Judy Garland, A Star is Born, because she did everything. She sang, she danced, she was funny, she was sad. So that is the greatest performance ever on screen.
Yep.
And I'm bypassing Wizard, and I'm even bypassing in St. Louis, because in A Star is Born, she did everything. That's all I wanted to say.
Very true. And she has such a vast body of work. I think most of us found Judy Garland through The Wizard of Oz. That's kind of our gateway drug to Judy Garland, right? I'm very curious to know, Judy, when was the first time you saw your mother in The Wizard of Oz, and what did you think of it the first time you saw it? Third time's the charm.
I always get this. You gotta hold it close. I can't remember what age I was. I remember I was really young. And I was with Natalie Wood's sister, Lana Wood. And my mom was in England. And she goes, Lana goes, do you want to watch a movie? I have to go make a phone call. And she turns on the movie. And I start watching it, and I'm not sure about it, but all of a sudden, I see the monkeys. That changed everything.
Did you realize at that age that that was your mom up there?
Yeah, but it was really confusing because I asked Lana what year it was made, and she goes, about 50 years ago. What? And I thought it was live. That's what I said, the flying monkeys.
You must have been pretty worried about your mom facing off with those little. Oh my goodness. I think a lot of us were pretty scared of those flying monkeys now, making mention of us.
Yeah, so then I went out in the hallway. I go, my mom just got kidnapped by the monkeys. I know it's true, because I just saw it on TV. So she goes, no, Joey, no. I'm gonna go call your mom right now. She's in Europe. So I got her on the phone. She goes, no, don't worry, Joey, it's all fake.
While you have the mic, and I'm going to ask the same of everyone who knew Judy personally, what is your favorite memory of your mom, if you had to pinpoint one?
That's a hard question to answer. Oh, God. Her sense of humor, her timing, her legacy, her children.
Thank you. Meredith, would you like to ask, what was your favorite memory of Judy?
I would have to say it was her laughter, because I knew whenever she was at the house visiting my aunt, there was just a lot of fun and a lot of laughter going on. Not every single time, but 99.5% of the time when Judy was there, everybody was having a wonderful time, including me. So, but real quick, the first time I saw The Wizard of Oz, sorry Dorothy, but I was worried about Toto. Thing came up when they're scaring, they're grabbing everyone, and I remember I was in Dot's room watching it, and I was about 5, and I was screaming, they're taking Toto, and Dot's going, but what about Dorothy? They're grabbing her. I go, I don't care about Dorothy. They're hurting the dog. And now, however many years later is, I show dogs, so there.
Margaret, is there a behind-the-scenes story about Judy that you can think of that you would say is your favorite memory of working with her?
There were many favorite moments, I have to say. And I always thought that she was so pretty. I loved her costumes and the way her hair was. And I think one of the moments I really thanked Judy for was when we were doing the cakewalk dance. Now, I am from a dancing family, but I can't sing very well. So I was very nervous about singing the song with Judy. And she was so sweet. She said, don't worry, I'm going to sing along with you. You'll be just fine. And I love the way you dance, so concentrate on the dancing. So I did, and that made me feel so much more comfortable. So the only song I've ever been able to sing was I Was Drunk Last Night, Dear Mother. And I did fairly well with that, but I never stepped beyond that song. She was so sweet, and she gave me confidence about the singing, because I was very nervous about that.
They say never meet your heroes, but it's so lovely to know that one of my greatest heroes, probably everybody in this room feels the same way, was as generous as we all hoped she was. So thank you so much for sharing that story. So Woolsey, if we could turn to you for a moment. As I mentioned, Woolsey contributed so much research to the 50th anniversary documentary produced by Jack Haley with Angela Lansbury, the making of The Wizard of Oz. So what can you tell us from behind the scenes of making that document? Take us backstage with you. What was that like? Because there really wasn't a documentary quite like that up until that point.
Well, I was really lucky by being in some of the right places at the right time. I came from, I was actually in New York City when Judy passed, and it was just kind of overwhelming to see how the city reacted to her passing. And I was with my great aunt, and I asked her if we could go to the funeral home to see her, and she said yes, we could, but we'd have to wait in line forever. And I said, okay, I think I'd rather remember Judy as being alive. So we didn't actually go. But 17 years later, I came to Los Angeles and started working in film history, film archiving. And first I was at the Directors Guild, and I met many of the directors that Judy worked with, and they told me all their stories. And then I got in on the ground floor with Turner. And that was just before the 50th anniversary of Wizard. And I was working with the 3 authors on the book about the 50th anniversary. And at the time, Turner was just getting their feet wet, and they didn't really know what to do with the film library. So Jack Haley Jr., who was a well-known documentary maker about Hollywood history, had come to them and said, well, I want to make a documentary about the Wizard of Oz. His father was the Tin Man. And so the people at Turner said, yeah, of course. And it was going to be for CBS, and it was going to play during the annual broadcast of The Wizard of Oz. So they assigned me to work with Jack Haley Jr. And my job was to do the text research for the documentary presentation and all of the supplemental art, anything that was behind the scenes. So that took me all over Los Angeles to the archives and libraries, personal collections, and I got to know where everything basically was buried in Los Angeles. And what that helped with was everything we did after that at Turner was based on the work we had done on that show. We did When the Lion Roars, the documentary that played on Turner. Soon after that, we started the whole program where we did archival interviews, and Margaret was a part of the archival interviews, and Joe was part of, and the family were part of the different shows we did. And that got the whole ball started with doing all these documentaries and DVD presentations, and eventually even the Rhino Records CD sets, because we found all of the different alternate takes and sound effects for Wizard. And all of that, the work that I did with Jack, led to us doing all these other projects throughout the years, which I think everyone here has enjoyed on various, first it was Laserdisc presentations, and then your dad had Laserdisc, yes, and now most of it's on DVDs and CDs, but it was fun to go over to Jack's office. He had an office on Beverly near Crescent Heights, and I would go over there, and he would show me all these little things he had just discovered. He found Arnold Gillespie was the special effects person. He just found all this footage of the tornado, and it was the test footage. And he showed it to me, and you could see it was just a silk nylon stocking with dirt being blown through it from a fan. That's how they created the tornado. So it was, I felt that my work with Turner, starting with Jack's show, led to all these other great projects. And I sort of felt like I had fulfilled that little thought of when I was a kid, that I wanted to keep Judy alive. And I think that these museum events, this event tonight, is just continuing that. We're all keeping Judy alive.
I don't know many folks who can still draw a crowd 103 years after they were born, so that's pretty impressive. I do have a follow-up question for you, Lindsay. What in your research for that 50th anniversary documentary, if anything, surprised you the most to find out?
Well, Turner had this, they had kept on staff some of the people that had worked at MGM since the 1940s. And they still had the editors who had worked with one of the earliest editors, Margaret Booth, had taught all of the, Margaret Booth, way back to the 1920s, they had taught these editors how to edit. And starting in the 1960s, people at MGM had actually started to transfer at least all the sound elements onto what they call magnetic tape to preserve it. And they hadn't saved all the footage, a lot of that had been lost. They saved all of the sound, all the music and sound effects cues. And the editors had these little books. And because I knew the history, they gave the books to me, and I was able to study them. And from that, we were able to figure out where all the music cues, all the different takes for every song, every music cue for Wizard of Oz existed on those tapes. And that's all what fed into these Rhino CDs. But one thing that was fun was that there was a cut scene in The Wizard of Oz where the Tin Man has bees come out of his head. And the witch says to the Tin Man, make you into a beehive. And we found that they had saved that sound effect of the bees shooting out of the Tin Man's head, and that was really, a special little thing that we found.
It's amazing to me how much of these films we'll actually never see because of all those deleted scenes. So I'm very curious to know. I think, for me, I would say my favorite Judy film is The Wizard of Oz. But after seeing The Wizard of Oz, discovered there's this whole library of films out there that perhaps people have no idea about. So I'd love to go down the panel and find out everybody's favorite non-Oz Judy film. And Margaret, I'm going to challenge you because you're into Judy films, so I'd love you to pick one other than your two that you would say ranks under. Of course, they're your favorites. One other film that Judy was part of that wasn't one of your films would
That
be your
Judy
favorite.
was in, or just another film?
That Judy was in.
That Judy was in, oh well, Judgment at Nuremberg. I thought she did a wonderful performance. That's when I was talking to you about her being a great actress. That was a very, very dramatic performance. So I loved all of her films. Easter Parade, you know, they were just all wonderful. And they made you feel so good. You know, and especially today, there's so much, some of the films are so down, you know, that I thank TCM that I turned on the TV show and seen a wonderful line party, wonderful dancing like we just saw on the screen. And we need that because I don't think those wonderful musicals will ever come back like that. There may be some, but they'll be different because nobody had that MGM secret. There was a secret that MGM had, and of course, they have all the most fabulous musical producers, writers, singers, dancers. That was MGM. So I'm very, very happy that I was able to be at that studio. Thank you.
Honestly, my favorite movie, excluding The Wizard of Oz, is Baby in St. Louis, and I really mean that. I'm not just saying that. You're welcome, and I had the pleasure of introducing it at the Egyptian Theater like a month and a half ago or so, and it was on nitrate, so some of that original film. That it was so cool to see that because it's so crackled, and it was just a different experience, which I'm so grateful to have. But as I've been like exploring more of my grandmother's work, because I didn't watch all of her, I didn't just sit there and watch all her movies growing up or anything like that. She really just felt like grandma, you know? And I know obviously that she's done this vast amount of work, and I've seen a lot of it, and I've heard a lot of her music, of course. But as I've gotten older and I'm exploring like more of her work, I'm really seeing like why people love her so much. And I thought Amy in St. Louis was such a good example of that because she is so, everything comes through. Like she was your sister, you know, in that movie. And she's funny, and she's beautiful, and she can sing, and she's captivating. So I feel like as I'm watching her work, I'm getting it a little bit more as to why people are so drawn to her. But I just really enjoy that film. You are so cute in that film. And it's like, it's a real being with you. I mean, we've spent time together in the past, but
It was so great because she wasn't overworked in that film. And she really had fun.
Yeah.
She really enjoyed it. I mean, she was never late. She loved getting to the set. And there were rules that, you know, she would have the regular hours like other people would have.
Yeah.
And I was so glad that Mr. Minnelli did speak up to Mr. Mayor, you know, who didn't mind working you too hard. And so she really enjoyed making that film.
oh yeah, and I think that relationship between Vincent and Grandma went pretty well, don't you think? Yeah. But yeah, so Baby in St. Louis is definitely my favorite besides Oz.
I like the acting in Judgment at Nuremberg. I know. She was amazing at that.
Yeah, I think for me, I think the acting top there were amazing. She had quite like Star is Born and Judgment at Nuremberg, not winning the Oscar, which we're still bitter about. But again, back to her seriousness, I love The Clock. I think it's a masterpiece. Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't get as much playtime as the other movies. Again, she's so noted, you know, for her, like Margaret said, for her acting and singing, and dancing and everything, I think one kind of just gets slipped away sometimes, but I think it's a masterpiece. And I am addicted to Easter Parade. I make my poor husband watch it every single year. We dye Easter eggs, and I make her watch it on mute every single year. While we're doing it. Yeah, it was awesome fun.
I can't pick one. The first one that came to mind was Summer Stock. I love Portland Fancy and Happy Harvest. Oh my God, Happy Harvest. And there's Collies at the end of the movie, so that was a big deal. That when they're all dancing and the Bill Silvers and Gene Kelly are doing that. I can't remember the name of it, but and there's Collies that they're joining all the dogs, so that was a big deal. Presenting Lily Mars. Not only was she gorgeous, funny as hell, and she had some wonderful songs in there. And A Star Is Born, of course. When people, I'll tell them something, I'll say A Star Is Born, and they'll say, well, which one? And I go, there's only one. And it's not the other two.
Well, I'm going to agree with Vanessa. It's Meet Me in St. Louis for me. It has all the elements of a musical, of course, and it has a little bit of the noir feel to it too. And I love film noir. So, there's some dark moments, but what I love about it mostly is the whole feeling of family. And I know that Judy, wrote for Life magazine. They used to have a column in Life magazine called My Favorite Role, and in the early 1950s, she wrote an article for Life that said her favorite role was in Meet Me in St. Louis. And it was because she loved the feeling of family that she felt while she was making it, and that comes across, and that's why I enjoy it.
I just rewatched Meet Me in St. Louis this morning after watching The Wizard of Oz, which is how I always spend Judy's birthday. And yes, we made that exact comment, Tiffany and I, about how, wow, this really does feel like a real family. And I would also love to add a note in for Little Nellie Kelly, if you haven't seen that one, where Judy plays a character and her own mother. Just so fascinating. Thank you all so much for sharing those. Meredith, your Aunt Dot was the contracted makeup artist at MGM assigned to Judy Garland. What do you remember about her, and do you recall any of her favorite beauty products? Because I don't know exactly what she would have worn. Is there anything in particular that you remember?
Well, first of all, Dot had the very enviable position of not being under contract to MGM.
Oh, excuse me.
She was under private contract to Judy, which gave her a whole heck of a lot of freedom. And she worked on many people at MGM other than Judy of her own volition. But because she was under private contract to Judy, that led to a lot of conflict. Even as late as the early 1950s, Dot was receiving inter-office memos that I have copies of telling her to watch her back because so-and-so doesn't want you to do this. And for instance, she was supposed to do Madame Bovary. She did the test. Vincent Minnelli, and I have his notes on it, said Jennifer Jones looked incredible. When it came time to shoot the movie, they didn't want Dot to do it. Dot had been asked by Gene Kelly, after she came back from England with Judy in '51, she had to turn around and fly back to France because Gene Kelly asked her to work on Leslie Caron for An American in Paris to do the test. And I have a letter from Leslie Caron about this. Leslie even said she loved the way she looked when Dot did her makeup. Came time to shoot the movie. For some reason, studio politics got involved and Dot was not wanted on the movie. So, but she didn't care. She had a good time anyway, doing what she did. As far as her favorite beauty product, soap. Really, because when I started to learn how to do makeup under her tutelage, it was, is your face clean? Well, it's okay. No, is your face clean? Go back and wash it and use a lot of soap. So to Dot, clean, healthy, clear skin was the best beauty product you could have.
Uh-oh, we're back. We're back. I thought another one bit the dust. We're back. It's good to know. Okay, so Judy's beauty secret was a very clean face. Good to know. I would love to know, especially from those of you who knew her, but everyone can weigh in on this. What is one thing that you wish people knew about Judy that perhaps they don't?
Yeah, I actually have an answer to that, I think, and I would love to make sure I tell this story correctly. I heard it from your mother a bunch of times, Vanessa. The thing I was most moved for after I met Judy's children, and I got to hear, like I mentioned, hear all these stories that you don't hear as a fan. Because now I'm working with her family, I got to hear the real stories. And the story that always moved me the most was Lorna, Vanessa's mother, had told me multiple times, was that the story that are connected with Jack Kennedy. And what I love about the story is that, as we know, now that Jack's been gone for many years, and he had Addison's disease, he was very, very sick during his presidency, and that when he was, at his worst in the Oval Office, he could be there for 6, 7, 10, 12 hours at a time, and actually laying on his back, working because he was so much in pain. And then when it got really, really bad, what Lorna was telling me was that at the time, he would say, everybody get out of the office, get Judy Garland on the phone, I need to hear a couple, bars over the rainbow. And she would call him, and she would sing to him. To find out later, now that I got involved in the process of making the fragrance, Judy, of course, had their own rose, the Judy Garland rose, which is a beautiful, beautiful flower. And I'm like, oh, right away as a perfumer, I'm gonna make sure I get this, fragrance into the perfume. That's a no-brainer. But of course, Judy threw me a curveball. It only grows down in Ecuador, so I had to literally plant 30,000 flowers in Ecuador 3 years ago. So we have a farm down there that we work with to get them in for the gala launch that we had on her 100th birthday 3 years ago, not only to show the event, but also to make it into the fragrance. And the reason why I'm mentioning all of that is, kind of behind the scene knowledge is now if you go see Jack at Arlington, he puts them in the Judy Garland rose to his grave because they were such good friends. And please collect any of that story if it's wrong, but I heard it from your mother, so But that's one of the things that really moved me about the story. I think it really just says to me, not knowing her, of course, what kind of person she really, really was. And no matter when he called, she was always available to sing to him.
I have to say her sense of humor. She would be on stage and she'd be on one of the Tonight Show or one of the Tonight Shows, and the announcer would go, "We'll be right back. We'll be right back after these messages." And I hear my mom in the background going, "Where are we going?" So, yeah, I would say her sense of humor.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because now that I'm doing more of these events and stuff, a lot of questions come up about her personal life and everything that we're sharing with her sense of humor, her strength, how she loved children. All of these things are passed down because they're still exactly how we are as a family today between each other and how I treat my children. I think the one thing that I would like to say is, there's a lot of stuff said about her personal life and, how people view how she spent her personal life and things like that. But I think it's such a testament to the kind of person she was with how all of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren have turned out. And I think we're doing pretty good, don't you say?
I'd say so.
Yes, I would say her sense of humor, and people sometimes look at Judy that she was a sad person. She was never a sad person. There were sometimes circumstances, like we all go through, but she would rise above it and have some funny little thing to say. And that's what I remember about Judy, being happy and fun. And before we all go, I want to say one other thing. This young lady's mother is also a wonderful talent. Laura is a wonderful talent. I've seen her in many shows. She's worked very hard for her career and to come into her own and to be her own talent, her own person. She doesn't copy anybody. She's very strong and she comes across as a very strong, wonderful singer and performer. And she's really coming into her own now. People know Lorna now. She's getting wonderful shows, and she really deserves it. And I wanted to say that.
I think, well, first of all, let me preface this by saying, even though I grew up with Judy, and she would visit and chat on the phone, and every week she would call us after her show was over for a critique from my dad and my aunt, and that kind of thing, I had no idea who she was until after she died. I really did not. I thought her TV show was just for us. I didn't know that because I was 7, 8 years old, and none of my friends stayed up that late to watch Judy Garland, of all people. So it just never occurred to me anybody else but us knew who she was. I mean, you know, she was just a friend of the family. So after she died, I would see headlines on newspapers and various movie magazines, and I was astounded that this person that would fold me up like a pretzel and just have a wonderful time in the house with. I was amazed that she had been this movie star. I knew she had made The Wizard of Oz, but that was about it. So I would come home and I would show, I was 13, 14 years old, and I would have a photo played with me. Dot, do you know that she made this movie called Me in St. Louis, and she made this movie called The Heart? And Dot would go, yeah, I know about those. I was there. So it amazed me. But I think the most important thing to me is the legend is not the person. And too many people confuse the two. There's a line in Star is Born, toward the end of the movie, after Norman Maine walks into the ocean, and Matt Libby, who was the publicist, is in the office of Oliver Niles, who runs the studio, and Oliver Niles is telling him that Libby is too bad you never knew him. And Libby is going, what do you mean I never knew him? I covered up for him, and I covered up his problems, and I got him to work, and I did this, and I did that for him. I did everything for him. And Oliver Niles, who had been a close friend of Norman Maine's, as well as his boss, looked at Libby and he said, you never knew him at all. And that's what I want to say to some of these people who expound on the garbage, and the crap, and the BS, and the junk. You didn't know her at all.
Thank you, and we do our best to dispel those myths, but of course, they're deeply embedded. So anytime you hear anybody tell a myth about Judy Garland that you know is not true, you make sure out there that you correct the record, because it's important to tell the truth. Vince, we're all smelling delicious.